Hello folks, greetings and welcome back to the class. So I think we have made quite some progress in the past 5 lessons I think to a point where we learned a little bit of programming, a little bit of Excel, a little bit of personal finance, and we are at a point where we'll have to go a little bit deeper into programming before we can come back and do a little bit more personal finance. Okay, I'll put it that way. Okay, so anyway, let's start with, let me open Excel. And today's class is going to be little, you got to follow through a lot and actually do things. So pay attention, right? And I'll try to be as slow as possible. Now, this is the software that we built. And the last class, I also showed you that I introduced a function and a sub. And you can pass parameters to a sub, you can pass parameters to a function, and the function actually returned some value, right? All of these things we did. Now today, if I go to this developer mode, if I click on Visual Basic, this is where we are entering in our functions and code, right? This is where we are entering in the code. And for a small piece of code like what we developed, basically we said calculate loan schedule, and then we had a module where there's a calculate loan schedule, and then the calculate loan schedule itself may be approximately, it is, I don't know, 30-40 lines, and then it also has there's a small sub and a small function, right? So Excel is pretty impressive. And by the way, I don't have to do programming for this. I can use a lot of Excel functions itself to actually do this, right? So that's all fine. But let's say that you are into professional Visual Basic for application programming. There are professional programmers, by the way, right? They actually build a very nice package where it extends Excel's functionality and it can do so many things in engineering, science, finance, etc. Okay. So if you want to get into professional programming, still VBA, right? Not any other programming language, then the editing facility that is provided by this environment is not that great. Okay. There are many things that you will discover as I tell you that are far better when you use a professional software editor. Okay, a professional code editor has a lot more features than what we see here. Okay, and that's what I want to get you into today. Right, get into some sort of professional editing system and kind of introduce to you the bells and whistles of software development, right? And actually, let me close Excel here. We don't need Excel anymore for today, right? So there is this software editor called Visual Studio Code. Okay, now if you know the history of Microsoft, that they have this Visual Studio product, right? Visual Studio Integrated Development Environment, which is very famous, which is used by Microsoft for a long time, and over years they built it into very full-fledged tool, and it's a very heavy tool, right? But Microsoft in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years, wanted to just focus on becoming a software company, which is what is their strength. And so what they did is they started building a lot of tools and gave it out free for developers, because we remember that if you're not a Microsoft developer, I'm not actually, then in the other world, which is basically the Unix world, we use editors. We don't use integrated development environment, right? And a lot of people use the command line. They like the command line. They want to do things with the command line, stuff like that. Now, given all of that, what has happened is Microsoft wanted to attract the other Unix programmers too. So what they did is they took the Visual Studio, I think they dumbed it down and created this beautiful editor, right? And then they also made sure that this editor is extendable or extensible by writing plugins for it. So then programmers wrote a lot of free plugins for it, and now it's a very, very powerful editor, and I kind of love to use it. I mean, I used to have all kinds of editors before, and I'm always in between. I don't like to do all command line or all using mouse, right? But this editor is a very good editor, and therefore, what I'm trying to tell you today is that if you want to go further in these lessons, you will have to download this editor, which is free. Okay, it's just free. Just go to Google, and type VS Code. Okay, let me see. Okay. So there is the website for it, and you can easily download a good stable Windows version, whatever that version is, doesn't matter. Just download it. Okay. Now, along with Visual Studio Code, you also will have to do some version control or source code control, right? What does that mean? It means that even when I wrote the last code, whenever I write code or whenever you change code, what if you want to go back to an old version? Let's say that you messed it up, and now you're saying that, hey, I want to go to an old version. Well, there's no source code control with VBA, so you cannot go to an old version, right? So you need source code control where the versions are maintained, so you can go back and forth with versions. Okay, and then this whole source code control it's become its own engineering field. Okay, how you do source control, how you branch, how you release code, all that has become a science in itself. Okay, but we don't have to go that complicated because we are individual programmers, right? But there's no harm in learning a little bit, right? Tomorrow, if you are in your work or somewhere you want to contribute, you can contribute, right? So for source code control, I want to introduce you a beautiful source control tool called GIT. Okay, GIT. Got it? So in order for you to use Git, you need to do two things. Okay, one is you just get the Git for Windows. Okay, search for Git for Windows, and you can download it. Okay, what this is it actually downloads a Git client that can be used for you to maintain your code somewhere in a remote place. Okay, so this is mandatory. You got to do it, okay, in order to follow my thing. But the optional one, and I would recommend doing it, right, is basically there is a website called Github. And Github is, and there's a lot of websites like this. Okay, it's a free tool that helps you keep your source code in version controlled way, and also it's a tool where you can actually share the code to others, right? So and this is my dashboard, and I've already logged into it. You can go to GitHub, register yourself for free, and then follow along what I'm trying to do. Okay, just follow along on what I'm trying to do. And in fact, I have multiple projects. You can also create projects. These projects are called as repositories. Okay, repositories is a piece of a project. Think about it as a project with a lot of sort of files that you can check in and check out and do sort of version control. Okay, so so sign up for it, and I'm going to now is the time when I'm putting the code in, and also now I'm going to share a link to you so that you can actually see the code. Okay, and that's the part that I wanted to do, that as I develop these things, I want to share that code with you, right? and GitHub is a great tool for that. Of course, there's a lot of things. Like there's Bitbucket. There's a lot of companies or websites that offer you this service, right? And for them, it's like they're giving it to you free so that a lot of people will use it. But there's also like paid account and stuff for people who are, they're having too many projects or the number of files is, many files. In that case, you need a paid account. But otherwise, it's free. Okay, it's completely free. So I am going to create a new project here, and I'm clicking on new repository. Okay, and obviously depending on your account name that you got, that it's going to say that okay, under that account what repository you want to do, right? And actually there is a project that I tried and I deleted, and I called it as Excel Works. Okay, it's Excel WORX. Okay, so usually I use this trick, that when you do work, you say works, and I don't put WORKS, but WORX. It sounds cool, it looks cool, and also generally that repository name is available, or that name is usually available, right? So that's why I do that. Okay, so I'm creating a repository called Excel Works, and I'm not putting any description. This is important, right? So generally in GitHub, you can have private projects and public projects. Okay. Now, public project, you kind of check in, check out, and then you also can give permission for other people, public, to commit code. That means that they can go and modify your code if you permit. Okay. If you don't permit, nobody can touch your code. But they can read your code, they can see your code. A private project is something that nobody can see. Okay, so if you have some IP that you need to protect, then obviously it should be a private project. But if there is no IP, nothing involved, you're doing something open source or something like me teaching something, just keep it public. Then I wanted to add a README file. Usually in a README file, you say what this project is. In our case, I want to demonstrate some of the capabilities of Git using that README file, and that's why I'm adding that. Okay. There is a git ignore template. Right now, I don't think I need it. I'm just going to leave it. I'll tell you what git ignore is later, so I'm just going to leave that. Now, some people would like to provide a license, okay, of what kind of license you want to provide, right? There's all kinds of licenses. Go look up on licenses. Right now, I'm not caring about licenses, okay? I don't care about license. This is really for people who want to, say that, hey, this is open source, and if you want to take this work, you can only do open source. I mean, there's all kinds of restrictions that way, right? But I'm not going to get into those stuff. So, and I'm creating a repository. Okay, I created a repository. There's nothing in the repository except for this README file, which has like a big bold Excel Works. Okay. Now, this is obviously I'm doing it remotely, right? This is a website. This is happening somewhere else in the server side. Now, what I'm going to demonstrate to you now is that, and I'm assuming that you signed up for GitHub. If not, just sign it up. Otherwise, just watch through this. Signing up for GitHub, it's not very important, but you do need to download Git for Windows and Visual Studio Code. Okay. So what I want to demonstrate today is that I really want to show you how you can change code and version control it. Okay, that's all I want to demonstrate. Now, before you start doing what I'm trying to do, I also want to show you something. Let me see if I can see it here. Well, let me open up Visual Studio, right? And view terminal. Okay. Now, terminal gives you your home it goes to your home user, right? Your home directory. Okay. Now let me see. Okay. So if you see my home directory, you see that there is a file called there is a directory basically. No, there is a file. It is called .git config, right? You see that? .git config. Now I can use the cat command and show you what's inside. Okay. In the .git config, you have a file with this. It's in Windows format basically. You have a user. Okay. You have a user, right? And then you have a email equals mailsimpson@gmail.com. That's my email address, right? And a name equals Simpson Yanam, right? Now, there is a git command that you can use to add this config to, right? There is a git config command which you can use, and basically I think it's, let me type it in. So you can do a git / dash is good, but I need to say global. Okay. And then after that you provide email address, right? In this case, let's say that I'm just demonstrating this for you and any email address. So maybe I'll have a different email address. Okay. Let me say it's mail to code, which is also one of my email addresses, @gmail.com. Okay. And the same thing, now I'm going to say git config -- global user dot name, and at this time I'm just going to give Simpson, just my first name. Okay. And now if I list, and I can, if I do the cat for git config .git config, you see it changed my email address and name, right? How's this useful is when you check in code, it's going to identify your code as that email address and name, and which is useful if you have 5 or 6 people adding code to your project, then you know who added that code. Okay, that's the purpose of this. So the command that you're using is git config -- global user.name and git config -- global user.email. And by the way, the great thing about Visual Studio Code is you can have this command line terminal right here, right, which you can use. So make sure that you have this, because if you don't have it, Git will complain when you're checking in that, hey, you don't have that configuration. So minimum, you need this configuration. Okay. And this terminal window can be closed like just clicking that. Okay. This is a very, very great tool. Now let's go back to the website. So you see that if I click on code, that it tells me that whether you're going to use HTTPS or SSH or GitLab CLI to connect to a GitLab repository. Okay. Now generally what you do is you can take this URL and then go to your client and say that, hey, I want to clone this project. And I'll tell you what clone is. Basically makes a connection with your remote project. I'll put it that way, right? Because there's a lot of, Git is a distributed source control system. And there's a lot of concepts that I want to tell you, but I don't want to overwhelm you right now. Okay. So anyway, but for us, we don't have to worry about all of these things because we have Visual Studio Code. And with Visual Studio Code, the beautiful thing is it integrates with Git very easily, and it integrates with GitHub very, very easily. Okay, so instead of opening a folder, you click on clone repository, and it immediately will give you an option to clone from GitHub here in the top, right? And so I click on it, and in my case, I'm already logged in. So it shows me all the GitHub projects that I have, and all I need to do is click on ExcelWorks. Now, of course, for you, it might say that, hey, you got to log into GitHub, right? You got to log in. And so that's why I think the GitHub, creation of GitHub is not optional for you. Now I'm thinking, the more and more I'm thinking, right? So create a free account. So if you say that, yes, I want to connect with GitHub, it's going to say that it's going to immediately pop up a browser window, make you log in. And once you log in, you will see a bunch of projects that you created. And in our case, in your case, you would have created only ExcelWorks, right? If you're creating it fresh, okay. So I click on ExcelWorks. Then immediately it says, okay, you want to do Excel projects, and that is ExcelWorks. Where do you want to keep that ExcelWorks project, right? So you can select, so you got to provide some sort of local directory. So I have under my D drive, I have projects, and I can easily say that, hey, let ExcelWorks be inside this projects, okay. And so I'm going to select that, and and you can create your own project directory. If you can create your own folder if you want, okay. And I'm going to say select that. So it says, would you like to open the clone repository? Yes, open it, right? Okay. So guess what happened? It really downloaded that whole project from the remote server locally, and you have a README file which has just the giant ExcelWorks, okay. Now here's what we're going to show. So this file is already under source control, and down here if you see, you can see that there is a branch called main. You see that there's a branch called main, right? What this branch main means is that, so many times what will happen is the main branch, you're kind of not supposed to touch it, right? Generally, when you want to modify a project or add more stuff to a project, you create a branch, you do all that work, test it out, and then when you're ready, you merge that branch to the main branch, okay. So right now I really want to modify this readme.md file, right? So I would, and generally this is, so you can obviously, this is very simple. So you can check in your project to the main branch itself, right? And when I say main branch, if you go back to the website, see, when I created the project, there is only one branch called main branch, okay? So back to my client code, to my Visual Studio Code. So if you click here, you can actually, on the top, you can say, and click on main branch. Okay, I click on the main branch, okay? And then it says create new branch, correct? So I am going to click on create new branch, and then it's asking me the branch name, okay? So I'm going to say, you can give any name, right? I'm just going to say modify dash readme, okay. And the moment I say modify readme, you see the branch is now modify readme, okay. Now I can switch between branches. I can go to main, correct? Or I can go to modify readme. Okay, both branches are available for me. Now I want you to keep in modify readme, and then go down here to this file and add something. Okay, now I'm going to say this is a project that demonstrates Excel VBA integrated with VS Code, because that's the goal today. Okay, so I entered that, right? Now if you see that as I entered things, you see that green line. Okay, and I'll tell you what this green line is. The green line indicates that this is the change you're making to an existing file that is under source control. Okay, and the other thing you see is that there is a white, prominent white dot there. That means that your file is not saved. So to save your file, you can press Ctrl S. Of course, you can also do file save, right, which is Ctrl S. Okay, so I saved my file now. And the moment I saved my file, you see that the file is here, it's included here. It says yum, right? And M means the file is modified. Okay, so yum here is the file is modified, and you see that in the leftmost corner of Visual Studio, you'll see a bunch of icons here, right? And each icon as or provides you something. Okay, this icon is very important because that shows you the file explorer. Okay, and you can actually hide it if you want. Now below that is a search. If you want to search a file, you can search a file, but below that is source control. Okay, so if I go to source control, there are various options available for me. Okay, so I modified this file, and see, I can actually go back, discard it. That means I made the change, but I don't want it, right? Then there is also a plus sign there. Okay, so I'll tell you what the plus sign is first, but you also have a commit button on the top with option to enter messages. Okay, so there are a few things that you can do. Okay, when you press that plus button, that means your changes are staged. Okay, but it's really not committed. Why would you stage your change and you're not committing your change? Is because that you may add more files, correct? And since you may add more files, then what you can do is a typical software developer will keep adding more files, write more code, write more files, and keep staging the changes. And once he thinks that, okay, it's a good enough stage where I want to commit the changes, then he commits the changes. That means then it creates a new version. And that big bulk or piece of work becomes new version. Okay, but we don't have such things here. I can directly go and commit, but I do want to demonstrate stage. So what I do is I just click on that plus symbol. So the moment I click on that plus symbol, now it says that my stuff this is a staged change, right? I don't have any changes down here, but all my changes are staged already. Okay, now if I go to the file explorer, you still have that M in there. Okay, so now I'm going to put some message saying that what did I change. I can say changed description, and then I can click on commit. Now the moment I click on commit, what happens is that change got committed. That means it created a new version, right? And in Git, your whole the whole project has a new version. That's a new snapshot that's created, and you can go back to that new that version whenever you want. So you committed it with the message, right? And see right here, it can tell you what's got committed, right? I can visualize the commits. Well, anyway, I don't want to get too much into the details, but all I want to tell you is that I can commit a file. I created a branch and I staged some changes and I committed it. Okay. Now, once I committed this, you see that there is a button which says publish branch. So when I do publish branch, what really happens is that my whole branch gets published to the remote location. And if I publish my branch to the remote location, usually what happens is if I have, let's say, 10 software developers, I can publish my branch. Then I tell all the other software developers, hey, I published my branch. Can you guys review it? And then I can merge that code to the main branch. Okay, so that's one way to do it. So on the server side, you are actually doing the merging. Now, since at this point you are just learning, I want to show you how you do the merge in the local, the client side, and then publish the main branch. Okay, that can also be done. So how you do that is, so I've already committed my changes. Now I can go to my main, right? So I am in main now. You see, show and run commands. Is there a merge? Okay, git merge branch, that is there. Okay, so you click git merge, and now it's going to say that, hey, from which branch I should merge, right? So I'm merging to the main branch. I want to merge what comes from the modify readme branch. Got it? So whatever changes is in modify readme branch needs to be written over my main branch. That's the idea. Okay. So I'm clicking on main branch. So now what happened is my main branch is having, this is a project that demonstrates Excel code. So now I merged. Okay. Now once I merged, now I've checked in and I merged, right? Right? And it tells me all the changes. Initially there was nothing. Now I added it. So it gives me all the details. Now what I can do is I can click on sync changes. Okay. So this says this action will pull and push commits from and to origin main. That means it's going to go remote. Okay. Say okay. So now it's synchronizing the changes with your remote branch, right? Okay. It says sign in, probably GitHub. I probably didn't authorize the signing in. Okay, it's asking for password, so I'll give my password. Okay, confirm. Okay, it's authenticated. Let me go back here. Says, would you like Visual Studio Code to periodically run git fetch? Well, git fetch is it periodically updates whatever the changes that's made. I can say yes, that's fine, right? Of course, I don't have any other developers building stuff, so that's okay. So, but the point is right now, let me close this. If you see that my main branch is now fully committed, right? I mean, if I go back to the file, there's no M in it. It's already modified. Okay. Now, just for those people who are curious, if I go back to Excel work, see, remember that the README file was Excel works. That's it, right? It's the main branch. But if I refresh it, See, whatever changes I made is actually in here, right? Now, the other thing that I want to tell you is that there are no branches here. Okay. So let's say that I click on main and it says modify readme branch, right? Let me go to the modify readme branch. Okay. Now I'm going to add one more line. Okay. I'm going to say something important. Okay. Okay. So now I am changing it. Control S to save it. Okay. Obviously it becomes M. Now I can go to the same Git thing. And right now I'm going to stage it. It's always a good practice to stage it and then do stuff. Okay. So added a line. I'm just giving a comment. These comments are very important because then you keep track of all the things you did, right? And I click commit. Okay, so now it's committed, but it's a branch. It's a branch on its own, right? Now this time, what I'm going to do is I don't want to go back to main, merge it, etc. Right? I'm going to publish this branch. I clicked on publish the branch. Okay. Now what happened? It said that okay, I published the branch. Now go back to the remote thing. You will see that first it says modify readme had some pushes. Okay, but here it says modify readme had recent pushes 40 seconds ago. Compare and pull requests. Okay, let me say I click on that. What does it do? It tells me that, hey, there's an added line here. Okay. And so this is how it was before, like the red one. But now it's added some stuff. Now it says create pull request, right? I'm going to click on that. Okay. So I created a pull request. Why do I create a pull request? Is that when I create a pull request, then I can tell everybody in my team that, hey, I created a pull request. So others will see it. And then we can actually set it up in such a way that only certain people can merge the pull request. That means when I click on merge the pull request and then confirm the merge, now what has happened is that, let me go back to code. So I am in the main branch and I kind of merged both the code together. And if I see the branches, now there are two branches now. I have a modify readme branch, which has some code, and I have the main branch. Now, of course, after you merge a branch, you can always go back and delete the branch, right? You can say that, hey, I don't want this branch anymore. I can actually delete it, okay? But right now what I demonstrated is on the client side, you can merge branches. On the server side also, you can merge branches, okay? And that's good enough for now because all I want to demonstrate is the way you can use VBA, Visual Studio Code with this Excel Works project, okay? So, and obviously this is a little confusing. Just go through it, just experiment with it, right? And then if you have any questions, obviously I can answer in the comments, okay? But I'm going to close it. The goal of our thing is not just showing you source code control, by the way, okay? I just did it just to give you an idea, okay? I just want to give you an idea of how Visual Studio Code works. Now, the important thing for us is how do I modify VBA files and how do I make it work with Excel, right? That's our goal, okay? So, but the nice thing about this editor is, see, on the top, you have these line numbers. And that's very important when you write code, right? And I'll give you, there's a lot of features available the search facility is really good. There's so many features available in this editor that you will enjoy, right? And so when you're going into a little bit more coding, I think this is a very good idea to have. Okay. Now, how do I integrate with Excel? That's what I'm going to tell you. Now, to integrate with Excel, you need two plugins. And by the way, your plugins are all in this little, you click on this icon, extensions. It's like Google extension, okay? You can get extension. So there are two extensions I want to download and install in Visual Studio Code. And so in the extensions, there is one called Live Server. Okay, it's already there. Live Server, right? You see that there is a live server, okay? This live server is needed because when I'm running the integration between Visual Studio Code and Excel, there is a thing called live server where there is a local web server that runs, which kind of helps with the integration, okay? So I'm going to install that. You see there is a blue button called install. So I'm going to install that, and it takes few seconds to install. So let it in. Server is installed. The other thing that we need, which is very important, is called as XVBA. Okay, and XVBA has two kind of extensions. One is ribbon menu, which means that you can customize, you can create your own ribbon menu. And the other one is XVBA, just VBA, right? Now with XVBA also, you can actually create new ribbon menus, okay? But anyway, this is the extension that you use. So this way, you get the power of this Visual Studio Code, but you're writing VBA code. Okay, so I'm going to install that. Okay, that's installed. Then let's go back. Now, once you install this XVBA, down here, you have this XVBA option. Okay, there is an XVBA option. Now, very important that in order for your XVBA to work with Excel, you will have to go to Excel, and I'll show you something that's very important. You go to options and you go to this Trust Center. Okay, go to Trust Center, and the Trust Center settings. See, here it says, let me see, macro settings. Okay, Trust Center settings, macro settings. And I've already done this, but if you have disabled this, then it won't work. So you need to say enable VBA macros. Could be dangerous because it's code, right? But in order for you to be a developer, you got to enable VBA macros. And then you also need to say trust access to VBA project object model. That is also important because that's the way that VBA, the XVBA in Visual Studio Code can communicate with Excel. Okay, so keep that radio button selected and checkbox this. Okay, and say OK. And say OK. Okay, now your Excel is actually ready to Excel is ready to communicate with Visual Basic, Visual Studio. Okay. Okay. Well, I want to minimize Excel for now, right? I want to keep this bigger because there's a bunch of stuff we need to do. Okay. So now, how do I do VBA? With Excel, with this VBA thing on, you see that down here there's little icons. I hope you can see it, where you can actually do various things. Okay, let me try the first option. Okay, so that option is the best option. Okay, so the first option is Bootstrap XVBA. Okay, so click on that, and up in the top it says create a Excel VBA project. Okay, and then so you have various options with examples, then ribbon project, project with Excel, it's all kinds of options, right? But you select the create Excel VBA project. I click on that. So as soon as I say that, under Excel works, this is important, it actually created a bunch of files. Okay, and all of these files are important for you to work with Excel. Okay, all of these files are important, so keep that in mind. And by the way, I am actually going to now add this to source control, right? Because I am in this modify readme branch, and I can again do the merge to main and push it up. Okay, but that's not important right now. I have a bunch of files that's created by this tool. Okay, now the important thing is, after you've done this, then under VBA files, you can create Visual Basic files. Okay, and what I'm going to demonstrate in this class is basically you create some code in Visual Studio Code and it will run in Excel after you export it. Okay, we'll see how that happens. So inside VBA files, let me create a new file called, let's call it as first dot BAS, because it's a basic file. Okay, the code that you write is basic code, so that's why it's called as first.bas. Okay, now the interesting thing with XVBA is that it also does a lot of code completion. Okay, so in the code completion, you type X dash and it will say X dash C file, right? Click on that. Now there's a bunch of things it's providing. Actually, I've seen that these other things are not necessary, so I'm going to delete it off except for the attribute VB name equals. Okay, so this is important. You're kind of mimicking, what this is doing is you're kind of mimicking a VBA file in Excel, how it's internally stored. Okay, you're kind of mimicking it. So here I am going to put the file name, which is first. Okay, I don't have to put the .bas. So I got to do this in order for my code to work, and then I can now create a sub. Okay, it's better to do that so that it automatically fills things up, and I can give a name. I don't know. I can say hello. Okay. Say. Okay, so I'm creating a sub like that, and then I'm just going to use our old friend message box, and this guy will give us a sophisticated message box. I don't want to do that. I just want to say hello world, going back to our old hello world program. Okay, so I actually created a sub. I created a basic file under VBA files, and then I am saying hello. Okay, now obviously I need Excel to run this, and that means I need an Excel sheet to run it, right? I need an Excel workbook to run this, because without that VBA will not work. So in order to do that, what you got to do is you got to go back to your Excel. You need to actually create a new workbook, right? So you need to say new. It could be blank workbook, but you got to save this file, save as, and you kind of need to browse to let me get here. You need to browse to that particular project that was created. Okay. So you go to the D volume, D drive, projects, Excel works, and this is kind of where this is the root where the project was created, right? So right here, the one restriction with XVBA is that all your files should be, that is for each project. Each project is one workbook, got it? And that file name should be index. That's one criteria. The other thing is this is not an XLSX project, okay? It is basically, of course, you know that it's a macro project, so you can always do Excel macro enabled workbook, right? But in order for this integration to work, you need to call it as not Excel macro enabled workbook, but it's a Excel binary workbook, .xlsb, okay? So select that and save it. And of course, you will see that index.xlsb is there, that file is there, okay? Okay, so now you got that, and now you will have to export this VBA project. You see that there is an export VBA. You just simply click on it, and you can say that, hey, is this development, or is it, do you want line numbers and stuff? I just want development, okay? Okay, so it actually exported to Excel, and we'll figure out, did it actually do it? Let's see that. If you go back to developer, Visual Basic, modules, you have the module called first, and it has the message box, hello world. You see that? So you did export your stuff to Excel, okay? So I'm going to close this, close it. Now, how do I run this? Okay. Well, again, let me close these things. See, here you have the macro list, and there is a thing called say hello, right? You see that say hello is there. And you have an arrow here. You can see that there's a black arrow there, right? Which says run macro. So if I click that, I should see hello world running in my Excel. You see that? Hello world. So basically, what I've demonstrated now is you're running your code in Visual Studio Code. You created you got a plugin called XVBA. Before that, we downloaded something called as Live Server. We had both of those. On the Excel side, and then we obviously we said bootstrap XVBA config, and we created a new project, okay? And that project created a bunch of files, some directories and stuff. Don't worry about that. But after you did that, and obviously in Excel with the file options, remember that you went to the trust center, went to the macro settings and said that yes, trust the macro and access VBA objects, right? Those things are done. Then in Excel, you created a new workbook called index.xlsb, which is a binary macro, okay? So you created that. Then you went in here in the code and you actually did, the code is looking the same. You did the sub, public sub, message box, that's the same code. The only difference is for each file you create, you just need to do that attribute VB name equals the file name, which is first, okay? So now let's do one more thing, okay? Let me do one thing. Let me do that. And I can create another sub, okay? I can say, and I'll make this also public, okay? And then I can give the name as greetings. Okay. And this time I am going to, do something more than just say message box. I'm just going to use the range command. So you see that range, I mean, all the auto, what is that called, as auto fills and things like that that we had in the other editor is still here. Okay. So in the range command, I'm going to put B2. Okay. Right there. And the value of that, okay, all that is happening, the code snippet filling up is happening. So range of B2 value is equal to greetings. Okay, and I'm saying it. Control S to save it. Then I'm going back to the Explorer, and here's the greetings, and I am clicking for it to run. I said run macro, and nothing happened. Right? Nothing happened. Well, why nothing happened is because I messed up, or I forgot one more thing to do, right? The one more thing to do is I got to go back to the macro and I need to export, right? So I'm exporting VBA, game development. Okay, now the code is exported. Now hopefully it will run. Let's see. You see, it ran and it populated that field greeting. Okay. So it's doing that, right? Now the other nice thing about this is, okay, I can run these thing, and I can, in fact, I can literally copy. Remember that we had that big bad code that we had with all the loan calculator. I can just pull the loan calculator here, and then I can do my work here. Except that all I need to do is I need to take that loan calculator file, make that as a XLSB project or XLSB file, and then I need to rename it as index. Okay, and if I put it in here, I can do this. I can run that code and I can see the code here. And so this code has also facility. I'll show you. So you have Visual Basic, right? So this is your module, correct? So you had public sub greetings. Now, if I do a public, let me do this. I'm going to do a public function. Let me put hello. Okay. And I'm just going to return hello is equal to saying hello. So I basically wrote a public function. In fact, I'll make that as a private function. Okay, this is inside Excel, I'm doing this, okay? And then after I do the greeting, I'm going to say range B3's value is actually that private function I wrote. It's hello. And remember that if I'm invoking a function, I got to put the parenthesis there, okay? So I modified some code in Excel, okay? Now I'm going to close that. then I'm going to come here and see there is a import VBA too. You see that? There's an import VBA. If I click on import, okay, it actually imported under the module. See, there is a first.bash under VBA files, right? But under module, it actually imported the whole thing, right? So because with Excel VBA, it thinks that, well, my modules are supposed to be under the modules directory, right? Actually, I probably made a mistake. I probably should have put the first.bash in modules directory. But anyway, I'm going to delete this just to avoid confusion. Okay. So I have the first.vba, which has greetings and hello and say hello. Okay. Now let's say that I reset, I just delete this. So now the expected thing is when I run greetings, it should run greetings and it should get the hello value which is returned and then populate the, I think it's the B3 cell. Let's see that. Let's run it. See, it said greetings and say hello. Okay. What I want to show you is that we can import files as well as export files. Okay. Doing this workbook. Okay. Now, of course, my goal here is not this Excel workbook, but the old Excel workbook. I want to take it. I want to save it as index.xlsb binary inside this project and then actually get the files. Because my goal today, I'll tell you this, I know that I'm going long-winded. I know that it's a little tiring, but be patient. If you want, pause it, go get a cup of coffee, doesn't matter. My goal is basically, I want to take that project, import it, add it to source control, and then give you the directory where you can actually view publicly how that source code works. And then you can take that, you can basically pull the whole project, clone the project into your, you can clone the project, okay? Only thing is you cannot modify it and check it in because that's my repository, right? So clone the project, pull the project down, and you can actually run this, okay? So that's my goal. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to delete this first.bash, okay? I'm going to close XLB, don't save, okay? Then I'm going to come here and then I'm going to delete the XLSB. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to Excel. I'm going to take the program that we built. We did all the hard work. And I'm going to do a file and I'm going to do a save a copy. It's not allowing me to save anything else. Okay, I'm going to do a save a copy. I'm going to name it as, well, I've got to browse and go to that particular project. So the projects Excel works, okay. And I do need to name it as let me do it like this, index dot, it's not XLSM but it's XLSB, so I'm going to say index dot XLSB, save it, and let me just go that way, use Visual Studio Code, and so that index.xlsb is there, okay. Now you don't want to open that here, but important thing is, so once I have that, I'm going to go here and I say import VBA. Okay, so now you see under modules there is a module 1.bas. Okay, and what happened? Let me just minimize this guy, maximize this guy. What's going on? What went on is that it actually pulled, of course there is some, I mean on the top there is a module 1 that's looking okay. There is some attribute, you see that there is some attribute thing that's been put here. Okay, that's some Excel stuff that's put, but by and large you have your program that you wrote right here. Right, you have the program here. Okay, now let's see. So you imported it, the program is there. Great, right? And see your line numbers. The code is a little bit more colorful. You can see the colors. It's well organized, right? And it's under the tool. Okay, so this is good. Let me go back and bring this side. And let me open up Excel. Okay. Now what we need to demonstrate is, okay, given this situation, I know that when I click on calculate loan schedule, obviously the module is going to run and it's going to work, right? Now I want to see if, let's say that I change this to 8 months, 8 years, okay. Does this program really, this is a complex program by the way, right? Calculating loan schedule. Does it really work under this VBA environment, right? And so the module that we need to run is, obviously there is this make decision and calculate payment. They're both supposed to be private, right? Make decision I've kept it public. But here's the loan, calculate loan schedule, right? So I got to run this. Let's see if I can run the program. Absolutely I can run the program because it, remember, it changed everything, right? For 8 months. Now let me change to 8 years. Okay, let me change that to 10 years. So if it's 10 years, it should show 120 there. Okay, can I run the program again? 120. So beautiful, isn't it? Right, that you can run your code right here in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so that's done. Let me close Excel. Of course, we'll save the changes. I'm going to open this up. Now the biggest thing that I want to do is that, so this time what I want to do is I want to take all of this work, check it in, merge it with main, and then see if this thing works. Okay, so I'm going to click on this thing. So a lot of things is in U state. U state means it's not even under source code control. Okay, so what I could do is, okay, under the state, under changes, right? So I can stage these changes. Okay, okay, the changes are all staged, so they are in A state. Okay, A means added. Now I'm going to give a comment like added new added loan calculation VBA project. Okay, very descriptive. I'm commenting it. Okay, now I can sync changes here, but I don't want to do that. I want to go to the main branch. Main branch obviously doesn't have anything, correct? Now I want to do show and run commands, and there is a git merge branch, right? and from modify readme, that's the branch. Okay, so now all the code is merged. So all the changes have to be there, right? Under the main branch itself. Of course, if I go here, I am in the main branch and I see all the files, right? Including module1.bash, that's important. Go back to source control, I'd say sync changes. It says obviously I'll sync, so say okay. So this is going to take a little time because there's a lot of files. I think it did it. Now I'm going to the server. Oh man, I think I got out of GitLab. Okay, so the GitHub. Let me do GitHub. Let me see, I'm still logged in. I am still logged in. Excel works. Okay, so you see that in the main branch, I obviously have the readme file, the index XSLB, XXLSB project is there, the Excel file is there. Then I have the VBA modules, XVBA modules, and VBA files, module1 bash. My code is there. Correct. So now it's very simple for me. Is like I can go back to code and I can actually, and I'll paste this in your in the description of the video, right? So I will copy this thing. This thing is public, so I can put it in there, and what you guys can do is actually download the code. You can try it, right? You can try pulling this code from this project, right? And there's also another trick that you can do if you are not using Visual Studio Code. There's also thing, all you need to do is you need to say in command line, if you have installed Git, in command line you can say git clone and use this URL in HTTPS. That will also pull the project for you, okay? But I would just follow the instructions in this video, do the VBA stuff, to do the Visual Studio Code stuff, and actually pull the code, okay? Anyway, we learned a lot of little things, so I want to do a recap. First thing we did is we installed Visual Studio Code, and I kind of explained why Visual Studio Code is important, because you can edit your code, you can do more professional work. And after installing Visual Studio Code, wait a minute, I thought I had this already. Okay. After installing Visual Studio Code, I also asked you to install Git for Windows, and you got to install that. Then after we did that, then you need to go and sign up in GitHub. Just sign in, create a project, modify the README files, do the things that I told you, like, checking in code, checking out code, creating a branch, merging a branch locally, merging a branch remotely, right? Just play around with it. Then go ahead and install these plugins, these extensions. The ones that's installed is the key thing that we installed is we installed this live server. Okay, this live server, if you see that, we installed it. And then we also installed XVBA. Okay, and once you install it, then in your file explorer you will have this XVBA macro menu, and that menu has this thing called Bootstrap XVBA that will create a project structure for you. Then you need to, any Excel file you can make that as XLSB, that is Excel macro binary. Name that index dot XLSB, right? Once you, let me close this. Once you've done that, once you've saved that file, then all you need to do is create bash files, and this attribute VB name equals whatever is what you need to use, and put that under module. Last time I just created a file under VBA files, but put that under module and it will work. Now the other exercise you can do is you can also take this, copy the module 1 from the remote project that I showed you and try to see if that works, right? But you now have source code control. You now have a way to run projects from this Visual Studio Code, but run it with Excel runtime, right? Amazing stuff. And I really wanted to introduce you to programming algorithms in this class, but there's a lot of stuff we learned in this class. I don't know how many minutes this whole video took. I need to go back and see. So I think I will leave it like this, right? The only thing is, since this is really a complicated lesson, I'm pretty sure that you will get into issues, okay? You'll get into issues. Now, if there are issues, please put it in the comments and I can help you as much as possible. Of course, since we are in remote situation, some of the things like, your machine may have Windows, some other Windows 11, I have Windows 10. So there may be some version differences, right? Or you are actually looking at this video a little late in time. By the way, I'm recording all this in January 2024, right? So there may be minor differences, maybe Microsoft upgraded Excel or the VBA facility, so some things may change, right? So even that, I can help you out as long as I'm seeing these videos, okay? But very important, you will have to play with it. You got to try. Even if you fail, keep trying. Because the more you try, the more you learn. Programming is, that's the thing with technology, okay? And we call it as playing with it. Actually, you're not playing with it, you're actually struggling with it, okay? So the more you struggle, the more little things you learn. Like I'm learning, as I'm teaching, I'm learning, because I don't know what this line means. This line 3, I don't know what it means, right? I need to go and figure it out. After this class, I'll go and figure it out. Because every time you learn, you play, you do things around with technology, you learn new things, okay? But I've kind of introduced you to a little bit, and very early in the game, I did introduce you to something complicated, because this is how professional programmers code. Now you may think that it's a little overwhelming, but guess what? If I put a strong foundation now itself for you, then you'll be a great programmer. And over time, I'm expecting you to not just do basic or VBA programming, but you can pick up other languages, right? And when you pick up other languages, the things that you learned about Git, the things that you learned about source control branches, all of that can be used for any project, any other projects, right? So you can branch out into, Python, Java, C#. I mean, you can branch into other languages, right? You can do web development. So that's why I'm trying to say that if I put a strong foundation, then that will be useful, and that's why I'm introducing something a little bit more complicated early in the game, okay? Anyway, thanks for your time. See you in the next class.